Hello, everyone. Welcome to Desk Doodles episode 9. I'm your host, Sapna Malhotra. As we were growing up, I remember often being asked by an uncle or aunt, "So, sweetheart, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to do when you're big?" And as a 10-year-old, all of us had these amazing ideas in our mind. One day it would be an astronaut, the other day a singer, a third day could be a cricketer or a teacher. But how many of us got to live that dream? How many of us really lived it? Because when we reached that age where we really had to decide what we were going to do, we realized there were so few molds that we had to fit in. But why was that so? Why couldn't we design our own molds? Why couldn't we walk the path that we wanted to? I think that is why entrepreneurial education is the need of the hour. It gives you a child the privilege to walk the path that the child wants to. I think it infuses in each and every child the curiosity, the fearlessness, and the creativity to innovate, to design their own path. Today on Desk Doodles, we have not one, but two amazing guests. One is someone who guides, who mentors hundreds of students every day to find that calling and to walk that path. And the other is someone who found that calling and is walking that path as a very established entrepreneur. So I'm so happy to welcome on Desk Doodles today my two guests. Welcome Malti Narayan and welcome Manav Subodh.
Thank you, Sapna. It's wonderful to be here.
Same here. So good to have both of you here. I'll come to you, Malti, first. You've been an educator for nearly 20 years. You've been a researcher at ISC. You have taught at university level in the US, and you've been working with students for the past, I think, nearly 20 years. And you've been heading Rajaji Nagar National Public School as principal for the past 4 years. So tell us a little bit about your journey.
I've been to many places. I've lived in many places, and if you count the number of schools that I've gone to, I think it's about 7 or 8.
Wow.
Because my father was an orthopedic surgeon, and he used to get transferred to many places. So my exposure to different kind of people, I think, has really helped me in my days of growing up. It's actually led to a lot of confusion too. But then now in retrospect, I think all those experiences helped me to be the person that I am. Living in different countries, interacting. We used to stay in a small town in Wales where I was the only Indian student in the school. And this was in 1978 or so. So I was always, in the front line. I would be visible, and I used to be I used to be introvert. So I think that kind of the limelight pulled me up to become the person that I am. Even in the US, I was very young. I was 23 years old. I had just finished my post-graduation in microbiology. And I was teaching first-year nursing students at the college. And in the US, they used to take a break after school, and they would come back to continue their education. So most of them were at least 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So that was a very scary time to stand in front of a room full of people who were older, but I think all those things gave me the courage to face. Now I think I can face a whole room of people without getting scared. And I always tell my children in school, those who have a fear of public speaking or those who are shy, that circumstances puts us, in a path where it helps us learn things, overcome certain characteristic features and come out with the best that we can. So it's been a huge learning journey for me, jumping from being a complete academician. I was very passionate about my subject. When I was in IISc, I published a paper, and I was completely into academia. And jumping into school was, sudden, and it was something I've always felt very passionate about teaching. So I used to take tuitions for biology and for French. I have a diploma in French too. Of course, I've forgotten most of it now. So that was a calling which suddenly came, and on the spur of the moment, I applied to the school and I got the job, and the rest is I've been here. This is my first school that I ever joined, and I think I'm going to retire from the school too.
But it clearly shows your passion to be an educator, and I think the love for your subject, I think that stands very strong in your entire story, right?
Yeah. I've been, that's something that pushes me on, and I'm kind of up to date with even the most recent research in my field. So even though I'm doing admin on one side, this is something that keeps me going.
Great. So coming to you, Manav, you are the founder of 1 million for 1 billion, 1M1B company. I just really love the name because it sends the message right there, so crystal. And you've been working with more than 10,000 youths across 200 plus schools, worked with CBSE, and you have this leadership youth program that you conduct in over 7 countries. And I think the highlight is the annual event that you host at the United Nations headquarters at New York. So you've been recognized by Forbes, by UN, by BBC. I'm falling short, of word, Manav, and I think you should just take away from here and tell us the journey of, like you call yourself, the accidental entrepreneur. So let's hear it.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks for having me today, and it's an honor to be in company of 2 amazing women. Ms. Malti and Sapna, we've known each other for long, and Malti and I have been working for a long time. So it's an honor. Thank you for including me in this, and happy to share some part of my journey on this topic. So I had a typical path most poet had during the 80s, 90s, right? Which is like had a good schooling, was a science student, got into engineering, got into MBA, and got into a very nice corporate job, and enjoyed thoroughly for 17 years. Worked for Intel Corporation for 10 years. Was a dream job. Was handling 30 countries. Was traveling the world. And then the moment of truth happens, right? That till when will I do this? Right? I was definitely not in the corporate race. I was not. I mean, that didn't excite me. To become a CEO didn't excite me. To become a hot shot. I mean, the typical corporate route didn't excite me. And that's where I started thinking that what am I here for? Right? And that was a very disturbing question. What am I here for? And it took a long time. It took me 5 years to answer that question, because I was dealing with that question for over 5 years. And then one day when I was kind of doing an entrepreneurship workshop in Egypt, in Cairo, this was during the Arab Spring. This was the time that there was a big conflict and stuff. And one of our entrepreneur trainers who I used to manage, he was from San Francisco, and he said, I'm not going to go there because the travel advisory says, you can't go there. And my wife is not allowing me to go there because of the travel advisory. And I said, well, we can't just back off, because we had already lined up a workshop with young people. And I said, can you train me? And I'll go there. Wow. So he trained me on Skype. At that time, there was no Zooms, there was Skype. And I went there. And of course, I convinced somehow my wife, who was very sporting at that time, and has been very sporty. But she said, okay. I mean, the Intel people said, a travel advisory. I said, look, I don't look like anybody from outside. Probably I look like them. I don't look like a foreigner. So, I'll go there. And they said, okay. And I went there, and I did my first workshop, which lasted for 2 days, back to back, 16 hours, like 8 hours, and it just went. And the outcome was something that shook me, because all these were young people who were without jobs. And suddenly I thought after the workshop, they had hope. They had hope that they own their own destiny. They are not dependent on the government for a job. They are not dependent on some large corporation for a job. They are not dependent on where they are staying for a job. Like this whole concept that you need to be in the US or you need to be in a emerging
Right.
economy.
Yeah.
And that really changed my perspective. And I decided to leave my job. At that time, I said, what if I can do this for my country?
And it
Which
just
is
came
what,
to you there, right there when
yeah.
you were there.
That's correct. And, it was like, what if I can do this for my country? Because there's so many people in the villages of India who are facing the same similar situation that, I call it like the have to and the want to, right? There is no choice, right? So we all are in this privileged world, a nice bubble where we want to be entrepreneurs, but we have choices. But there are not a lot of people who have to get a job, have to be an entrepreneur, and then started working in the villages. Failed miserably for first year, second year, but then thought that the real pivotal point or the center of gravity lies in young people. And if I can work with young people and youth entrepreneurship, that can really spark a lot of changes in India. And that's what I'm inspired with. I'm still trying to do my bit. It's still a long way to go, but yeah, 5 years into the journey now.
Amazing. I think so adventurous and so inspiring, Manav. I think viewers listening to it also will be inspired, because especially the young generation, because there's so much of energy and so wonderful, such wonderful ideas they have. It's just that sometimes you need that boost of confidence from somewhere, and you see somebody who's done it and you feel that maybe I can do that, and it's just about taking that first step. And I mean, it's very similar. Like when I went solo as well, it was so scary. It's scary as well as exciting at the same time, because you're so happy that you're going to walk the path that you passionate about. And then again, it is scary because you're just leaving that comfort bubble and then you're putting yourself out there. So
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
think great hearing your story. So like
yeah.
is the tradition on Desk Doodles, guys, we have a big question every time. And I'm going to put that big question to you, Malti, first, because you were I think, the first few schools that opened their doors to an entrepreneurship program for children, and which Manav brought it to your school. So I'll put the big question to you first, and Manav, we'll go back and forth as we start talking. So Malti, my question to you is, why do you think we need an entrepreneurial education at school levels today?
Well, Sapna, I think it first of all brings reality into the classroom. What is out there. It also, at a young age, you're going to change the child's mindset into an entrepreneurial one, which means it's going to get expanded into the community. They're going to start thinking outside of themselves. And you start doing this at an early age. It's going to develop competencies and skills in them, which no other subject is going to bring in. It's going to, in this age of digital communication and networking, kids already have a huge amount of resources. It's just how are we teaching them to be self-reliant, to be self-made. It teaches resilience. It probably helps them, face challenges, and can they iterate them or pivot them entirely? How do they face it? And in this day and age, teaching them at a young age when they're exposed to a lot of things is extremely important. So I think this program in schools, it also, if you bring it into schools, it teachers, if we equip the teachers to identify a student's potential and groom them in the right way, it's going to make a difference to the school, to themselves, to their families, to the school, to the country and the world. We never know who's that bright spark that's going to change the world.
Yeah.
So I feel bringing entrepreneurship into schools at an early age, even as early as grade 5 or grade 6, we see the difference in the children.
I would say even grade 1. Why not, start from ground up? Because wouldn't that really, put the foundation so strong for them to just start thinking like that?
True, very true. We can actually go younger and younger, you know, as
Absolutely.
once we have a foothold and we've tested
Correct.
it and we know, yes.
Yeah, because if you see like younger children, smaller kids, right? Most of the time they always go why, and they don't stop that why, right? And that why I feel is also the key why an entrepreneur innovates, right? Or an
True.
entrepreneur creates, because that curiosity is not satisfied till he has found a solution for that, whatever the problem
Yeah.
or the solution to any thing that he's thinking of. And I think that's what a child does. So if we
Yeah.
start young, I think we just tap into that curiosity so
We
early.
tap the why and then we add on the when and the how
Yes, yes.
and then make it happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Manav, coming to you, generally people start with a program ground up, they say, right from down, and you have done it the other way, right? You were right there, and then you brought it to the young youth, and now you brought it to the schools. Why did you feel that need that you needed to take it to schools?
See, a lot has to do with my personal journey, right? I wish somebody had asked me this question, that what are you here in this life for? I mean, the question that I said disturbs me, and that is the question that is the core of every program that I do in the schools of India, and of course in NPS Rajaji Nagar. We start with, what are you here for? What is your calling? What is your purpose? What calls you? And if you look at what calls you, on the other side is what disturbs you. So when you are really asking that question, things really happen. And it happened to me. I mean, I'm from a very academic family. My mother was a professor, of course, now retired. I'm not from an entrepreneurial family at all, has been very service oriented. I've got a service background in some way and an academic background. So entrepreneurship was something that I never thought of. And that's why I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, because I never went for it. And it happened, and I stumbled upon this big question. And I think I just take that big question back in the classrooms today. And the big question is really to my younger self, and that's how I enjoy this work, because it's to my younger self, where I go in the classrooms, and I have, of course, now a very passionate team who believes in the same philosophy. We go back in the classroom and say, what are you here for? And that changes everything, because it's not an entrepreneurship class, right? It is a find your passion class, find your higher purpose class. And of course, we don't get too deep into it, but at least at the right level. Because if I look at it, let me ask you a question, and Ms. Malti a question, right? When you think of entrepreneurship, what are the three words that come to you?
I think
Um,
creating,
yeah.
creating something,
Innovation.
Innovation, yeah.
and solving something.
Solving problems, yeah.
And
Like
team work, communication, and marketing yourself,
marketing, yeah.
or what belief you have.
And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, looking within what I really would like to do, what I would really enjoy doing. I think that has been the key for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I ask the same question to young people, most of them say money, most of them say competition, most of them say VC, most of them say Mark Zuckerberg, right? And that itself is not the right definition if you look at it, right? So yeah, in the academic environment, the word entrepreneurship has got a bad reputation. Generally, I'm not saying in some schools like NPS are different, but generally the word entrepreneurship has a bad reputation because it's seen as earning money. It is seen as being an outlier. It's seen as killing everybody, making money, going after something, going to the Silicon Valley.
I think more like a career choice. It's always branded as a career choice, not like a mindset change. I think that's
Exactly.
where.
So what if and what we do is, what about entrepreneurship is about not competition, but about collaboration? What if entrepreneurship is not about just making money, but giving back to the world? Right? Those are questions that in our generation, people, when I started this work, and, one of my friends called one of my other friends and said, tell Manav not to leave the Intel job. He's gone crazy. And said, why? He's talking as if he's retired. so the work that sometimes it's seen as, oh, when I've made money, when I have a nice house, when I have something,
And
I'll
I
go
should
and
be
give back
done.
to the world. And probably it's like 60 years, you're 70 years, and you don't have time and energy. And I think that needs to change, and that's increasingly is changing. That entrepreneurship is about a higher purpose.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship is about collaboration, not competition. Entrepreneurship is about contribution, not just taking everything out from the world and spoiling the environment. So I think that is changing, and this generation, which is in the classroom that all of us are dealing with, are very open to that conversation.
Yeah.
And when you change that context, things happen, and it has been happening. In fact, something that I'm very proud of is 80% of the students that we have on our entrepreneurship program are girls.
Wow.
80%.
I
Yeah.
would really clap
Yeah,
for that.
really.
Seriously. I
And typically entrepreneurship, the stereotype is, oh, it's the boy sport, right? Technology, no, it's like, oh, 80% girls. And I think that when you change the context, because girls respond better to a purpose,
right.
a higher purpose kind of a conversation, then they get excited about it. And in fact, when I used to do this job in Intel, I had just the other way. It was 20% girls and 80% boys. And every time Intel used to tell me, how do we get girls?
Yeah.
Every time, like.
No, and I
And
think also, Manav, that when we talk in reference to big cities, I think the dynamics would change. And when you talk about it in terms of when you take it to villages, I think that's where it would really help, because I think somewhere I feel there, the girls are kind of pushed into the background most of the times, and you're working with them gives them a privilege to come forward and kind of have at least that option to come forward.
yeah. In fact, I can go on and tell so many amazing stories around it. Once I was in a village and doing the same workshop, and it was only with the girls, right? And I used to say, what are you passionate about? All those typical questions, and nobody was answering.
Right.
And then I saw one girl raise her hand really in the back, and she says, I want to start up a teddy bear store.
Oh,
And I said, why teddy bear? She said, I was raised and I didn't have teddy bears. I want my brother to have teddy bears. So if
oh,
you look at it, it's all about contribution,
yeah.
right? She wants to start a teddy bear store. Now, if you look at it, like it's any other business, but if you look at it, she wants to start it because her brother didn't have a teddy bear, because the brother loves teddy bears. And
And
that was great. And I
wants to
said,
bring
wow, I
some
mean, that's a.
happiness. She wants to spread that happiness around. And what you said earlier on also, Manav, when a little while ago I was conducting a workshop at school, and they had these volunteers from across Bangalore. So they had these high school students who volunteered just for the day, and there were students from different colleges. And so I just got asking them, I said, so what is your plan? You're right there on the precipice, so what is the plan in the future? And 80% of them didn't want to take the regular jobs. They said, we want to go entrepreneur, we want to create, we want to do this. And I came back and I was like so impressed with the next generation, that they have the independence to think, which I think in our times was very, very limited. And I think one of the reasons is to bring these learning skills to children, to schools, that would really help increase that. So, moving from there, I would like to come to you, Malati, that you've worked with Manav and with the students in your school with that program. So, what do you think was the skill set that you felt was really needed for children, to become a part of those kind of programs, the entrepreneurial programs?
Sapna, what we noticed was, first of all, the students that we have seen who are part of this entrepreneurship program, they had a personal passion about some problem. Whether it was regarding pets, or whether it was regarding mental health and well-being, there was a personal touch. And you ask the child, why did you choose this? There is a personal story behind every choice of topic for this program. So I think, first of all, it's amazing to see these youngsters, bring out their passion. and doing something about it. That in itself tells us that they have, looked within themselves and they feel very strongly about something, and they have even identified, how do I go about finding a solution to this or helping solve something related to this. So one thing is about the creativity that goes in converting a thought into a process, right? So that was one of the amazing skills which I really appreciated in each and every one of them. Second is about teamwork and coordination. Okay, you've identified the problem, you want to do something about it. How do you go about it? You face obstacles at every step. Especially now, we just suddenly switch to online schools. You don't meet your friends, you don't meet your teachers. How do you carry it forward? Things like that. So as we said, they're digital natives, right? So they've been able to find a solution to everything. They've networked, and I actually find that amazing. How they've gone about into that. And probably another thing which I think is the courage that they have. It requires, at the age of, let's say, 12, 13, 14, which is our average age group in this program. It's that sheer courage of let me see how I can do this, and the confidence also that I can do it, and it's even the confidence to completely pivot and change their idea when it's not working.
True, but I also at the same time, Malti, I wanted to add to that not all students also have that confidence, right? So somewhere I feel that when we bring in entrepreneurial education to schools, it also empowers the children who are not equipped with those skills to start, believing in those skills, start believing in themselves, and empower themselves with that kind of confidence to stand in front of other children and just put their idea across, because that is also one of the most difficult things. I think a lot of children find it difficult to stand in front of even 4 people and say, no, I believe in this, I think this is going to work. That's so difficult, right? What do you think, Manav? Have you experienced something like that with children?
Yeah, in fact, a lot of things I'm learning personally, and one of the things that I now firmly believe is in the power of introverts. The introverts have something, right? And if you can spark the introverts, a lot of things can happen. And in fact, a bunch of our students who are doing amazingly well. In fact, Ms. Malti and I can talk about 100 such students now who've
I
gone
would
to
want
the
to hear. I would really want to hear about that from both of you, really.
So there are Ms. Malti students who are not like the typical students that you would, if you do a debating class or if you do a presentation skills, you would have a certain category of people standing up. But in this program, the students from Ms. Malti School, NPS Rajaji Nagar, who spoke at the UN, were students you wouldn't typically think are presenters, right? But they did exceedingly well from the rest, and they were presenting like nobody. Yeah. In fact, few of them would be, now we are nominating them for TEDx's. But wow. I think that's the power. And I consider myself an introvert, when I was young. So I think the very fact that you can talk to introverts using a program called entrepreneurship is a big one for me, right? It gives me access to talk to the introverts and say, hey, what are you here for? Yeah, and then they become like something else, completely something else, and they go and speak at the UN, and they are talking to the Secretary General, they're talking to ambassadors, they're talking to people that you won't even imagine, and you don't have to like teach them anything. You don't have to tell them how to talk. They're talking. They're fired up.
The environment that you created inside that room when you were there with those students and the trainers, and I think the environment itself must have been so positive and energized that I think it just the children just blossom. They just open up on their own. What do you think, Malti? I'm sure you have so many examples from there, right? You
Yeah,
really
I mean, there are these children who I just heard mumbling. You ask them a question and they'll just mumble an answer, which will be a monosyllabic answer. So my jaw dropped when I heard them speaking at the United Nations. And as you said, the electricity of the place, it just gives you the intensity that you're looking for. See, it's something passionate, yes, but then you've taken it to a different level, and we've seen these children in the classroom grow. I mean, I was telling Manav that one of the boys, I remember, how did you bring him up to this? It was frankly amazing to see them. So. And I remember we were standing on the steps about to enter the UN building, and it was very cold, and we were all in a line, and one of the children, a little boy in grade 8, he said, "Ma'am, we're actually here. We're outside. You realize we're outside the United Nations building, and I'm going to speak." So you could see the radiance, you could see the excitement.
I'm sure. And it's an experience for life for them. And I think the amount of confidence that generated in that child, I think that'll last him a lifetime, and that'll help him to decide really, when that time comes, that what I really want to do with my life. And he's been through that journey. That's why I think I would feel so strongly about it, that, that bringing these programs to children would really help them to, live such better lives in the future.
True. Very true. Very true. They're
in
going
fact,
to do, I'm sure they're going to do wonders in the future, because it's created that spark in them. And that was something, as I said, just put them in the reality of the situation. And then that once it's ignited, it's going to go on for years.
Definitely.
Yeah. In fact, I want to add in there under that story. So that was outside the UN when we all of us were entering. And we had a fabulous event. The students did us proud, and all international delegates were in awe, right? They were really in awe, and it was covered by UN TV. So we had everything, and of course, I was organizing it. So what it is, right? When you're putting up a program together, you're worried about all the guests and how they're feeling. And then I see Miss Malti is missing, right? And I said, "Where's she gone?" Right? And I go out, and there's a cafeteria outside the room. Inside the UN, there's a UN cafeteria, and she was sitting like this. And I said, "Oh, something has gone wrong," right? And I said, "I hope you're okay. Everything fine." And she said, "Manav, I need to do more. I need to do more." And and I want to give that as a compliment, because
Absolutely.
see, it's not just the students. You need educators like Miss Malti to give that thriving environment. And in spite of her students doing a great job, just a few minutes back, she was outside just introspecting what else I need to do. And I think that attitude of I want to do something more for my children will have a will encourage an ecosystem which will help these young innovators, entrepreneurs, inventors thrive. So I think that's really critical. And I as you were talking about it, I just remembered how she was sitting and how she was like, "I need to do more. I need to do more." I said, "Okay."
That was an "oh my God" moment. Yes, that really was.
I'm so happy you brought it out, Manav, because that really speaks volumes about the whole thought that goes in your, mind all the time, Malti, to bring something. And you were the first ones who opened doors to something like this in Bangalore. So I think that really credit goes to you for keeping the students in your mind and their welfare, and how you can bring them up in so many different ways. So amazing. And from there, I really want to bring out more of your experiences together. And I'm sure through the program you saw that do you think that the entrepreneurial education brought out a burst of creativity in children as well? Do you feel that, like, from children who felt, I feel that every child is creative, every child has a unique creativeness to them, but sometimes children are, like you talked about, in introvert when they have to go up and talk, but in other ways as well to create things. Did you feel that burst, unleashing of creativity?
At every step. I mean, the program has multiple steps. So we could see the growth in that. You know, it starts off as a small seed, as an idea. Then the trainers and the students and all of us, it kind of gets a lot of input, and then it grows and it grows, and then the students kind of there is a level of competitiveness amongst them too.
I'm sure.
So they see each other, they're there for each other's presentations. There are question answer sessions. So students, the ones who have taken up the program, you know, they present it to the other students, the juniors or the seniors, and they are, you know, they get used to answering the questions. So, so there were multiple sessions like that. So when I felt even at the United Nations, when they were asked questions, you know, it was questions that they've been asked before. So, you know, they were able, they were comfortable with the answers. They were giving very valid reasons or answers to the questions posed. And we could see the creativity build up, the confidence build up at every step.
And these are 12, 13-year-old students as well.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. I think we even had somebody who was 11 or 12. They were very young. Very young.
The youngest was 11 years. Yeah.
11
Oh my
years.
God! Wow.
So we could see it. We could see that build up at every stage, and that really helped. So that's what Manu was saying. You know, I was thinking, oh my God, we have to, you know, give them more inputs.
Yeah.
You know, give them more challenges to face. That's when the creativity. The more challenge you face, the more creativity.
And I think right now you had the program for a selected few. Do you in the future see that, you know, you could just have it universally for all your students to
I'm
be
sure
a
we
part
can.
of something like that?
Yeah, I'm sure we can, and I think see, the students also, they like to see what's happening first. As you said, there are certain introverts who won't suddenly jump into it, you know. And once they go through the experience, even for me, when I went to the United Nations and I saw what was happening, it was really a realization of the depth of this particular program. So in the future, yes, I do see as the years go by, more and more people join.
So Manav, you're working with the schools now, with CBSE schools. Is it being integrated into a teaching program, or is it just for a limited few? How are you doing it?
So we started with the NPS group. Typically, most of the NPSs are now part of this program. And I think hats off to the NPS leadership for believing in this program.
Absolutely.
Like 4 years back. Now, in fact, one of the things that you know, and not all schools are like that, to be honest. I mean, everybody has a different agenda. The needs are different. The demographics are different. The children who are coming from different communities are different. So it's not that everybody is going to respond to this program. But it is important that we make this mainstream. So I think what we are trying to do now, we took the same concept, and I was part of the CBSE planning committee for the program on artificial intelligence. And one of the things that I started bringing to them was that, can we integrate entrepreneurial thinking? Now, entrepreneurial thinking is the buzzword, or is the keyword, or entrepreneurial mindset into a program like AI. So somewhere you need to have entrepreneurship not as a standalone program, but you need to integrate it with something which is mainstream, like AI. It could be blockchain tomorrow. It could be artificial, it could be augmented reality or virtual reality tomorrow. These are the technologies of the future that everybody is talking about. So somehow we need to integrate the entrepreneurial thinking and contributing to your communities and make that as mainstream discussion.
Right.
And CBSE has this concept called the Seva program, which is where there's a period allocated every week for community service, and it's part of the timetable, right? And something that we landed up piloting in about 100 schools last year was doing AI for Better India, like, and that became part of the Seva period as such, right? And then we were talking AI, and now AI has become, you know, there's an elective that is in AI, and what we are helping some of the students do, and of course this is in partnership with IBM, is we are integrating AI for a better India in 200 schools,
Oh,
teaching,
wow.
making that as a program. And and the artificial intelligence AI elective in the 12th grade, the students have to come up with a capstone project.
Right.
So the idea really is learn AI for better, AI for good, or as they call the good tech or the good technology, and use AI for creating community impact, which is nothing but entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
right? And then that becomes part of your capstone project in your 12th grade.
Wow.
Now, I think that is the right way to go, because then you have making entrepreneurship and leadership and changing the world a mainstream discussion, and not like a Saturday, Sunday out of school kind of a program,
And
right?
also,
And
I
I
think
think
when you said that, the when the children are interacting with, suppose this is run by IBM, you said, so the students would be in an interaction with the corporate world. They would be brainstorming ideas with the tech people there. So they kind of feel that what they're learning is right, applicable right there, right? The vision is, the path is so clear to them.
exactly. In fact, rather, it's both ways. And in fact, I'm now working with a lot of these smart engineers. The Silicon Valley style Bangalore engineers who are mentoring these students, and they are part of our program. And I often find these mentors come back to me and said, "I learned more than they did." So,
Yeah.
because if you look at it, the problems these people want to solve is something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. I mean, they want to solve mental wellness issues,
Yeah.
right? Because how can I use AI for mental wellness? Because that is a problem they see in their community today. Mobile addiction, right? That is a big problem that they see today, right? And how I can use AI for mental wellness, how I can use AI for healthcare.
Yeah.
That is a big subject today. And this is all coming from the students, right? We are not giving them kind of cookie cutter projects and say, okay, do this. No, we are saying, find your passion, the same discussion, figure out what you want to change, and then use your AI skills to do that and amplify that and scale it, right? So that is the new narrative. So healthcare and agriculture, I want to save our farmers,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I want to provide analytics to our farmers. So if you look at it, they're looking at all backyard issues, as we call it.
Yeah.
So every time when we were thinking of entrepreneurship, we are only looking at, oh, let's solve problems of Silicon Valley or Africa or somewhere, right? Or let's create a new gaming company or a new social media company. But now it's like, I want to use my skills to solve my backyard issues. I think, and that is the change that needs to bring in. One, we need to make it mainstream,
Yeah.
integrated with regular topics like AI.
Yeah.
Hope it gets integrated with biology. In fact, there's so many girls who are coming to our AI programs who are looking at topics like biology, who are specializing in biology, who want to become doctors. There's psychology students who are coming to us and say, I want to learn AI. Because suddenly you are now made AI as not a computer science topic.
Yeah.
It is a topic, it is a language like Hindi,
Universal.
German,
Yeah.
Kannada. It is a new language that you need to learn to make an impact in the world. And
Right.
I think that's where the conversation needs to go, that how we can make this all mainstream.
Yeah.
And also look at your backyard issue. Just look at the problems that you can relate with. Because
Correct.
often we say, oh, farmers are having this kind of a problem, but you've never seen a farmer. You don't belong to the village. It's hard. But when you go to a rural student, which we are now going, I mean, they say, I want to change my father's life,
Oh
right?
yes. Oh
My
yes.
mother is like this. I want to change her life, right? And those are people who are going to go a long, long way. And
When you're
technology will
talking
only play a amplifying
Yeah.
role for
When you brought in that talk about the farmer, Manav, a few years back, I was working with one. They provide scholarships to students who are in need and who are not financially able to support their graduate studies. And I used to provide support to them. I would call them up, and my only job as a volunteer was to know if they need any other help from the company. And believe me, and these were all children who had come from very very small towns and villages. They were sons or daughters of maybe a cobbler or maybe a vegetable vendor, and they had made it even to IIT. And when I used to talk to any one of those, I would get goosebumps because the kind of passion and the fire they had in their belly. And they were like, I'm going to graduate next year, and I'm going to call my cousin, my friend, and I'm going to make sure that child gets a coaching class. He attends coaching for applying to all the competitive exams. And it used to I used to get so emotional just feeling that passion in that child. And I think what you said is so important, that we start integrating these kind of thought processes in all our children who are more privileged than some, right? To look
Yeah.
around and to lend a helping hand wherever they can.
Yeah.
No, I was when Manav was talking about the relevance of a topic, he was saying, like, for example, farming. It's relevant in a rural setup. So I was having this discussion in my biology class about COVID and the use of oxygen cylinders. So there were these kids with statistics who said, about 2,000 kilograms of oxygen is used per day in a hospital with COVID patients. Now you connect it to deforestation. You know how much oxygen would trees release, and it's like 118 kilograms of oxygen per tree per year. And you do calculations like that, and you bring two things together, then it makes sense for us to say, okay, environmental conservation, what's the need? What is the value of oxygen released by a tree? Quantitate it and tell. We just say the Amazon rainforest is burning, or India, the forests are being cut down. Give them the relevance, give them the, have a discussion. It suddenly makes sense. Oh, this is what we're talking about.
So, I mean, the youth today, I think they notice, and they're so, clear in their thought. A few days back, I had a, conversation with a young change maker, Garvita. I don't know if you heard that talk. And she says, for her, she started a movement of save water. And she said it just came to her when she was in a restaurant. And, generally the waiters would fill up the glasses. And she says most of the water goes waste. And that just triggered that thought process. So I think the youth of today do look at things in a way that we probably as younger people did not. And I think it's time that we tapped into that kind of vision and used it to create a better world for everyone.
Yeah, in fact, two stories come to my mind as you were sharing that, Sapna. One is there's a TISB student who's saving the Belandur Lake, right? Who's working with us because he said, forget the rainforest. My city is, I'm embarrassed because this lake was on fire. And he's now working around creating sensors to measure the acidic level in the lakes and informing BBMP authorities.
Wow.
So that when it is more likely to catch fire, right? And of course, he's giving real-time report, and he's a nerd. He's a techie, right? He's inspired with technology. And the other is Miss Malti student. Just yesterday, I was talking to him. Now, he's a complete introvert. He belongs to a rural community, and he's part of our program. He cannot communicate as in talking as well, but he's a very powerful communicator using documentaries. And he's a drone photographer, and he used drone photography and movie making and documentary. And he is now making documentary in his village on what are the water bodies in my village, which are the streams, and how they're going to just vanish in 5 years. Wow. And he's taking that conversation to all the school children in the village so that they all can save it.
Wow.
Right. So I think that's the power of what young people can do. And I think talking about creativity, the question you asked, I think they have a very unique way to solve the same problem. If you had asked me to solve the water bodies problem, I would have started maybe a campaign, maybe some news articles here and there, maybe some marches here and there, right? But this guy's using like drone photography. Right? So they are natives. I mean, they are YouTubers, they are bloggers, they are natural at all these social media stuff. And the moment you power them with a purpose, they use all these kind of the new skills which this Gen Z sort of are natives to, and they have a unique creative way to solve the same problems, and probably a better way.
Yeah. And also I think they if they hit a wall, I don't think they back down, you know. They hit that wall and they start walking along the side and find something else. Like, as we as adults, as soon as we hit a wall, we feel dejected, and you know, we feel like, oh, that's the end of it. I don't think I can find another solution to it. But they have, you know, a vision where they, okay, this didn't work, okay, this will work, and this will work, and they have so many ideas that they bring out.
Yeah, yeah. No, in
Yes.
fact, one of the things that I would love to talk about is this whole grit mindset, right? The mindset that these young people have, and somehow we need to get that grit mindset into the classroom.
Yeah.
It's a famous study with a Stanford professor came out on grit mindset and how we can get that in the classrooms. It evolves from growth mindset and grows to grit. But one of the things that is I personally believe in is you know, somehow the girls give up, right? Or we need to have, we need to get the girls into a stage where they don't give up that easy, right?
Hmm.
So let me give you an example to elaborate that point. So when you're talking about entrepreneurship, a, a, a boy, even if he or she's not prepared, will show and say, I'm prepared. A girl would get it right completely before she comes to you and says she, and we know generally girls are smarter than boys. But now if you look at all the corporate leadership position, the very fact that we are talking about how do we have more women in leadership, I think it just goes down to what we are teaching in classroom. If we are making girls more resilient, don't give up, have that grit, right? I think that will go a long way in the future to also have entrepreneurial skill set, make more corporate leaders who are women, right? And of course the gender discussion needs to be in the boardroom, and we need to have
Definitely.
those kind of, but I think that's what it is. I think the grit and the resilience need to be brought in, because you know, girls are, you know, because of various reasons,
Yeah.
and this is like my experience, they're distracted because the parents will say something, right? They have so many other things to do. And the boys, I mean, you have to get them motivated, but once you get them motivated, they
I
even
get
like go up.
I agree to a lot of what you said, Manav, and I think generally also, as girls, I'm not speaking for everyone, but this is my perception that, you know, to stand stubbornly in front and say that, you know, I really want to do that is very difficult for a lot of girls in especially in houses where, you know, whether we like it or not, there is discrimination between girls and boys. That is definitely been there, and I think still continues. We are in a better world now than what we were before, but the choices given to girls, of course, are sometimes lesser than what they are given to the boys. They have, you know, more freedom to experiment, which the girls don't. And I think by bringing entrepreneurial education to schools, we bring them at par right from ground up. We bring them up in, even if it doesn't happen at home, but if it is happening in school, I think somewhere it empowers them with the courage to stand ground.
No,
Yeah.
agreed. And in fact, that's why I'm really proud that 80% of our students are girls, because I think that is a conversation that entrepreneurship can drive, right? Have more women as leaders,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's, and we need to tell them it's entrepreneurship is not about making money, right? It's about following a larger purpose, because that's where things change completely. I mean, there's a girl working with us in the village who says, I'm going to eradicate alcohol from my village because she faced abuse from her dad, because our dad is an alcoholic. Now, you're taking the same education which we are teaching in the nicer schools, in the international school, and the same education in a village school, and you see a different result. You see a girl standing out who wants to be now taking up, and hopefully she can join us this time at the UN whenever that opens up and whenever we can travel. But I think, you know, leadership is everywhere. And I think my dream is that, and my hypothesis rather, is that India's Steve Jobs probably is in the village, and we need to get them out there.
I wish you all the best for finding and, you know, unraveling that Steve Jobs. And what you said, Manav, is so true that, you know, problem solving is just not finding a problem and solving it. It just changes your vision as a person, because you start looking at things in a way that you generally don't. You look around you. And so I think somewhere it encourages children also to think about service and to think about society and community at large. So I'm sure, Malti, you would have also seen in your children, once they, their friends who were part of this program, and it would have kind of seeped into the rest of the children as well, who were just watching that.
Yeah, of course, and it has seeped into their everyday lives also, because any problem they approach it with that outlook. They learn to look at things differently.
Absolutely.
And we have primary school children coming and asking, when can we be part of, when can we start a project, when can we do this, So it's exciting. And as Manav was saying, we do notice a whole lot of girls who are more passionate, and they are perfectionists. So that's what I think. See, they embark on it once their ideas are solid. They want something, they've created something, they want it at a certain level of perfection before they present. So that's one thing that we see a difference. Boys, as he said, yes, they will stand up, they will say whatever is in their minds. Girls are more, they would like a streamlined thought and do it to perfection. But it's very encouraging to see the enthusiasm build up, and it's building up with the teachers too. I think we have involved a lot more teachers also to sit in on their sessions, and we have students presenting. In fact, one of our students last month had chosen a topic of well-being of teachers.
Wow.
Nobody has thought of teachers' well-being in these times. So this was a grade 9
Amazing,
student.
Yeah, Kirti. I mean, she's a grade 9 student, and
It was
it was amazing.
her thought. It was amazing, and she presented it to a groups of teachers, I would say, at each step. And the teachers, you should see the enthusiasm of. She had activities and she had panel discussions like this, and the teachers were. Really into it. So it's really encouraging, and I'm really proud of the thought processes, the enthusiasm that's coming out, the creativity that we see.
Absolutely. And I think another important thing that I feel is that the younger we start them on this, I think the results are so much better, because I think as the children also grow up, the fears increase, right? That's when the creativity comes down. And the most important thing as they grow up or when they're in high school is the result. Am I going to reach there? Am I going to achieve that? And is it going to be 100% successful? So I think that is what drives the whole process when you're in high school. Whereas when you're in the middle school or even in the primary, I think, the thought of just walking on that journey is so strong that the result comes later. So I think you have so many more ideas that you play with.
True. And taking it to younger, earlier levels. Right now I think we're working on kind of a theater group online for early learners. So I think hats off to her for bringing in this program to our schools, and it gives that opportunity, and we hope to take it at a younger and younger level.
Absolutely. Manav, have you worked with the really younger kids also, like the primary years?
No, except for my own son.
That's a learning every day, right?
Who now, of course, he's in the middle school, but yeah, he used to maintain an ideas book.
Wow.
And one of them was growing trees, and how can I start a tree factory? Right?
Wow.
So the creativity is, of course, very high. They are not limited with what's right, what's wrong, where are the failures, what can be done. They have they are in a way oblivious to failures, which is, I think, a great space to be in. And the more you get educated, the more you are aware of failures and the pitfalls, and somehow that prevents you from taking that step.
Yeah.
And teachers and educators can play a big role. And I think hats off to Dr. Bindu Hari and the NPS management for taking that bold step. I mean, when I was talking to her about this program 4 years back, I was just saying, oh, I hope she takes it. I hope she takes it because, you know, NPS, okay, it's a big school, TISV, big school, right? And she said, okay, let's go and do it, right? So it was like, wow, I mean, how did that happen, right? So it was wonderful. And we need educators like Dr. Bindu Hari, like Ms. Malti, like Ms. Indra in NAFL and other teachers to take that step and believe. I think it has to start at the top, and the teachers and the principals, the moment they allow the ecosystem to thrive. I think one of the things we all need to humbly accept is, right, okay, we are not entrepreneurs in the traditional way, right? The best we can do is create an entrepreneurial ecosystem in our classrooms or in our schools and in the community, right, which is like a community of problem solvers. If we do that, I think automatically things will happen. We don't have to do much. We have to just make sure we are giving an environment for young people to thrive and to come up with their own problems and looking at their own solutions and just giving them all the access and resources they need. I think that's what we need to do.
And like we said earlier also, it's a mindset, right? It's not just about a career choice. It is a mindset, and bringing the children up with that mindset really helps. And now that we were talking about our children, like from middle and the high school, and how failure is what, becomes a big fear as you grow. But when your children, you're resilient to failure. I think you just, starting from a child who's building a blocks and he's creating a structure, and the moment the structure breaks, it's very intrinsically ingrained in him that he'll just start building it again, right? And you're intuitively just creating. So I think but as you grow up, failures are necessary, because failures also fuel your path to success. And recently I was listening to a lot of these established entrepreneurs, whether it was Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg. And for them also, in their story, they always say that failure has been the big key for success for them. So I think I'll ask that question to you first, Manav, because you must have been through that path and experienced a lot of it. So how did it help you?
A number of times, in fact, number of times I was just thrown out of meetings. And of course, a number of times, the biggest thing you have to get rid of is self-doubt. I think, and of course, allow yourself to fail and not be too harsh on yourself. But I think I'm more talking in the context of young people. I think we organized something called the Failure Talks. So we had for Future Leaders, the program that we did, we had the co-founder of Pixar and the producer of Toy Story who joined us from San Francisco. And he was not talking about how good the Toy Story was. He was talking about all the failures he had and how he wanted to give up and how he was told he can never do it and stuff. I think what we need to do is make failure talks as part of our mainstream conversations, because I think the more we are open to failures, I think that's going to change it. And personally, I think all of us have more failure stories than success stories. I think it's known for that one thing that probably we all are talking about. But I think if we open up a failure talk, we can go on for 24 hours on this on this podcast. But yeah, I think we just need to make failures as part of main living room conversation. Yeah, in school and even at home. I think home is very important. The teachers can only do their job if the home environment is also supportive and the parents are supporting. Correct. And something that we have seen in Future Leaders is there's a direct relationship with what a student has done at the UN and the parenting style. I mean, we can write a book today on the parenting style and how that has helped this child to perform so well at the United Nations. I think, and I would give, besides the teachers, a big applause to the parents who are really encouraging that discussion at home, who are not kind of, like the parents in the 1980s will tell you what to do and you execute it, right? You need to really let them be and let them thrive. And I think that is going to be that's going to create a big difference.
And I think from there, I also want to add, Manav, when I was teaching, even with the kindergartners, I've taught from kindergarten to high school. And even when I used to work with the kindergartners, you could just make out in each and every child where that child is coming from, the kind of, time that the parents are giving to that child. And it would reflect in the child's behavior in every day in the classroom itself. So I think it's a big shout out to parents who give importance to that part of parenting where they need to be there and encourage children to think independently as well.
Yeah. In fact, I tell parents when I talk to them, and we have separate session with the parents because we cannot do this program unless the parents are supportive. So they become an integral part of the program. And the only thing I tell parents was in the next 2-3 months till we are doing the program, can you tell your child all about your failures in very casual discussions that you have over tea, coffee, or as you're driving? Because I think those things will really help. And also, de-stress the students and the young people that it's okay to fail. I mean, of course, I'm not saying go and fail, but when you're, I mean, remember, just recall the time when you learned how to ride a bicycle. Remember a time then when you first learned your swimming lessons, right? I mean, you can only do this by doing it. There's no manual that can teach you this, right? No
And
manual
nobody
can teach you
can
how to ride a bike.
Yeah, nobody can handhold you through
Yeah.
the entire journey. So
Yeah.
they have to go at it
And
themselves.
do it.
And I think only when you fail or you have those setbacks in the journey is when you realize how strong that passion is, that is the trigger for that journey. And if it is strong, you will keep going. And I think somewhere, what I think also entrepreneurial education teaches children is also that you need to be stubborn, as well as at the same time be flexible and open to the thought that if it is not working, I might have to tweak it a little, and I might have to change the path a little. That acceptance also is very important.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things that I firmly believe in is make your students fall in love with the problem, not the solution.
Yeah.
If you're in love with the problem, the solutions won't matter because solutions could be failing. But if you are committed to something bigger, which is solving a problem, you will come up with 100 solutions and you won't worry about failing
Right.
because you're right there just trying to get the perfect solution that solves the problem. So often we get in love, right? We fall in love with the solution. I fall in love with a lot of solutions in 1M, 1B, by the way, which I had to sort of, the market teaches you that, let's solve the problem,
Yeah.
right? Not the solution.
So do you, both of you, I put it to both of you, any experiences that you had with any of the children when they were like, it's not working out, and they felt that there is no solution, and then finally they figured out something like that? Did something like that ever happen with any of your interactions?
I remember a couple of students after we reached New York City. They've done their presentations. They have their PPTs ready. They have their short pictures and their main presentations. And then they had a few sessions with some experts there. After reaching there and after the sessions where we had just another day or two for the final presentation at the UN, they kind of lit up and said, "Oh, I have to change this according, and Manav, don't you remember? Some of them completely changed their completely changed their PPTs, completely changed the way that they're approaching it, and their speeches, and rehearsed multiple times. It went. I think in the hotel lobby. We had this group which went on till 11:30 at night the previous day. So that was, but they were, they wanted it. They wanted to perfect it, and they just switched and changed.
Yeah.
And that requires confidence in themselves. Like, that shows that how confident they were that at the very last minute, they could change it and still take on, right? I mean, that is the kind of boost to the confidence that the program had given them. That's amazing. Yeah. Manav, you had something to say as well?
Yeah, I mean, I had a story of a girl giving up and then really succeeding at the UN.
Yeah.
So there's this girl Tanvi from TISB. When we were about to go, Tanvi's father called and said that um, she won't be going. And I said, why? She said, she feels she's not confident and she feels she's not done enough work. And her idea was recycling plastic. Right? That was the idea. And she had too many things on her plate. And one of the things was a musical concert that she was part of, and that was coming up. And I said, why didn't you tell me this before? He said, why? I said, she's fond of music. I said, yeah, why don't we use music for change? And the father and we discussed, and then he convinced the daughter, and she came up in 2 weeks, before going to the UN, and she qualified.
Wow.
She came up with a project called Music for All Ears, in which she got music available to a lot of underprivileged schools, and she performed in the underprivileged schools. And in fact, she got, because of her work, she recently got invited to showcase her work. She was all in the newspapers as well a few
Wow.
weeks back. But imagine, like, she was ready to give up,
Yeah.
right? And now, and of course, and the first question was, we have something called the go no go session. So you have to go through the fire drill called go no go. If you get a go, you go to the UN, right? If you don't get an, and many people don't get a go. And she got a go in 2 weeks.
Wow.
2 weeks, a new project, and she got fired up, and she did this program, Music for All Years, in a underprivileged school, make music available, piano and music available to all these schools which don't even have desks and
Amazing.
places to
Wow.
sit. And it was a wonderful program.
Wow.
So you never know what happens, right? You
Yeah.
never know what happens. The only thing we keep on telling is don't give up. Don't give up. Even in, like, as Ms. Malti is saying, even like 12 hours before the critical project, you could be changing.
Yeah.
And you could come up with a presentation no one has ever heard before.
Right.
And that's what we see. You just need to allow them to kind of change and pivot.
So that's, I think that is what is fundamental, is that if they go through a program like this, that is the, the big discussion today that I wanted to bring out, is that if the children have gone through a journey like that, it is easier for them to do that, right? It makes life easier for them to, at the last minute, also take a call that, no, I can do it. I'll change the entire thing and I can present this. But if, not everybody is comfortable. So if we make all the children go through a journey like this, we are empowering them with so much of confidence to take decisions like that.
Yeah, and that's why I believe in the power of accidental entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, you have to somehow slip in. You
Yeah.
have to make entrepreneurship, serve entrepreneurship from the back door, because in the front door, many people don't relate to it.
Yeah.
And the moment you make it part of the mainstream, make it part of their projects, make it part of their capstone work, make it part of the science education. Look at that fact. India is still reeling so behind in our number of innovations, in our intellectual property, in our research work. A lot can change if you get entrepreneurial education. And entrepreneurship is just not for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurial thinking is for all of us. I mean, the incidents I was talking about with Miss Malti, she's entrepreneurial like nobody else, I think. Right, Sapna? You are entrepreneurial. And, so entrepreneurship is a skill, and being an entrepreneur is a choice.
Yeah.
And you don't have a choice when it comes to a skill set. And entrepreneurship as a skill set, I believe, should be made mandatory in all our education. And I think that will make really India stand out from a lot of things that are happening, from a technology, from a research, from the number of PhDs that are coming out in the country. I think that is all set to change with this generation thinking very differently.
Yes, I think nobody, you summed it up so well. And from there, I really feel that, in the times to come, that we could make, like we have biology and chemistry and physics and science as subjects, we had an entrepreneurial education period every day, or at least twice or thrice a week. And I think that would really charge up the children to go to school, because if it was just about, taking up a project and working on it for that term and presentation at the end of the term, and I think the thrill to present and see, it work and be applauded for it, I think that from younger years upwards, it would be such a learning.
Yeah, and I think things are changing. In fact, CBSE has introduced entrepreneurship.
Yes.
I was part of the Delhi government. The state schools are thousands of schools. They have integrated something called the EMC, Entrepreneurship Mindset Curriculum. And it's, again, the words, look at it. entrepreneurial mindset. I think that's the right way to go towards this. It's not just being an entrepreneur, it's about the mindset. And I think these small changes that are happening, and of course the big ones, because looking at what CBSE has done and what Delhi government has done, and of course the Kerala government was the first one to do it. I think gradually we'll see a very different generations coming out of schools.
We already, as Ma'am said, we have the SEVA, social empowerment through work action. So that's implemented from grade 1, where they choose a topic and they present it, as you said, Sapna. So it's starting early. We even have a market day for grade 6, where they manufacture products. You know, they have these presentations to parents for the venture capital, and they calculate profit and loss and product design. And you know, by the way, the grade 6 people decided that most money is made when you have food.
Food.
They make food. Whatever else they make, you need food. So you need a pav bhaji counter, you need a pan puri counter.
You can't go wrong with food.
That's so correct.
Nothing goes wrong with food. Yes.
I remember, Malti, my kids were at NPS. They both studied there, and when it was their 6th grade time, and they had this market, so one of them I think did some bookmarks, and the other one, but they were like, no, we need to have some brownies or muffins on the side, because people don't come to our stall if we don't have food. So we're going to do this, but we're going to keep some food on the side, because people will come.
Yeah, so every stall has a food counter also attached to it. Draw the crowd.
They started thinking like that, right? No, and
and one more thing which was really cute was towards the end of the day, when the sales winding down, they come up with these amazing deals. I remember there was a stall which sold hand painted bottles. Just ornamental bottles, and the next stall next to it was growing plants without soil. So they had clay containers with gel beads and hydroponics and so on. So both stalls were not making too much money. So they took the plant out of that, put the gel bead in the ornamental bottle, sold the plant and bottle, and decided a price then and there and sold it. These are grade 6, so it was very cute the way they think at a crux.
Yeah. I think so. It was so amazing to get all these experiences and ideas out from both of you, Manav and Malti. And I think before we wrap up, I would like both of you to give just at least two tips to our teachers and our parents out there who are listening, and to students. So what is the biggest take from our discussion today?
I would say creativity is innate in all children. And as adults, teachers or parents, we need to bring out that creativity. We cannot dampen that creativity, however trivial it may sound, and we should not trivialize it. A small thought can lead to a huge change. So that would be my takeaway message. Creativity in children is like a miracle. We sustain it and we bring it out.
Beautiful, beautiful. What about you, Manav?
2 things I would say. One is allow your students to fall in love with the problem, as I said, not the solution. And that happens when you have immersive experiences. Yeah. And immersive experiences happen outside the classroom, not inside the classroom. So allow as much for your students to go and discover outside the classroom what problem you want to solve. Go and talk to people. I think one of the things that we don't do well is we innovate in 4 walls. Right? That's not what innovation, that's not how it happens. Innovations happen with people. And innovation is a service. You're innovating for somebody else. You're not innovating for yourself. So a number of times we think there is a solution to a problem. And when you go down, there is something else and you're solving the wrong problem. As we say, are you giving a painkiller or are you giving a vitamin? And most of the time it's a vitamin that you are given. So if somebody has a headache, you need a Crocin or a Dolo. You don't need vitamin C tablets. And most of the time our innovation are vitamin C tablets when a person has a headache. So, and that discovery only happens when you have immersive experience and you fall in love with the problem. I think that's one tip that I would say, make your students fall in love. And the second thing is, entrepreneurship is a team sport. And entrepreneurship education is also a team sport. So don't do it alone. Get people inside your classrooms who have done it. Get people inside your classroom who could be inspiring in their journeys, right? Our job as an entrepreneurship educator is more facilitating role, right? And if we can somehow have a flipped classroom approach where we are getting people, we're getting experiences, we are showing visuals, we're showing documentaries, we are letting students talk more than we talking, I think that's what it would be. So entrepreneurship is a team sport. Get people inside the classroom and make the students fall in love with the problem. Those two things I'll say.
Wonderful. I think really go ahead with all your thoughts. I would just like to add to that is that, our world outside is changing so fast. And some of I think the safe and the amazing career options that are now may not still be there in the future. And as educators, as parents, as uh, established entrepreneurs, I think it is our duty to empower our children with that fearless curiosity, creativity, and the passion to innovate, which will help them build a better world for themselves and for also the society at large. So thank you so much for being on this panel and sharing so many wonderful experiences. And like you said, I'm going to live with this experience that we've created today and take back so much from all that you both contributed to.
Thank you, Sapna. It was wonderful. I had a lot of fun and was a wonderful experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you. My pleasure to be among two amazing ladies here. So thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out, and all the best, and see you soon.
Thank you.
You.
Bye-bye. Thank you.